With 2025 coming to an end and after about 2 years of LEGO Battles Online, I decided I'd make a strategy tier list. So these are all represent strategies that have been used at least one time in a multiplayer match. I'm sure I forgot some, but these are some of the more notable ones. Um, Doing this on slides because Tier Maker doesn't like me. So this is going to be assuming the present game rules, which is elimination, 500 starting bricks, no pre-built, no random, and with the 400 gold brick nerf. So let's start with a group of 9, and this is going to be the first S tier strategy. Um, Ever since the beginning of online, this has kind of been the main strategy. It's pretty reliable. It doesn't really have any weaknesses. Um, it kind of went from a Biff cruise rod group of 9, and now the main group of 9 has Queen, 3 catapults, an assault ship, and 4 either cavalries or Grippolies. Um, it's pretty hard strategy to pull off for beginners, but I think for experienced players, it's probably the best strategy in the game. The other strategy I'm going to put in S tier is 3T3 heal. It's kind of a polarizing strategy, but it's one of the best strategies in the game, especially right now. Um, this strategy requires a lot of micro, but if you can pull it off, it's really annoying to play against because you can just constantly take out a farm every time you go in and then just run away and heal, and then you can come back in 5 seconds and do the same thing again. The reason I'm putting it below group of 9 is because if you expect it, it's actually pretty easy to counter. I'll go over some of the counters later, but the easiest way to counter it is just by picking Sheriff, and this works well on large maps. So the next strategy I have is quad assault ships, and this is the best strategy to counter 3T3 if you don't have Sheriff. But I'm going to put it in A tier because I don't think it's as good of a strategy overall. The main problem with it is you obviously can't retreat and then within 5 to 10 seconds come back in later. The strategy is definitely stronger than 3T3. It just doesn't have the disengage option, and it's really only usable on water maps. I don't think anyone would really consider using this strategy on a ground map. So now I'm going to kind of go over the rush strategies. I'm going to start with the Ninja Master rush, but this really could be any hero. I'm putting it in C tier. It's really, really strong, especially if they play Sheriff, because Sheriff really can't do anything. And even against Alien Queen, if they don't expect it, this can really do a lot of damage. But it's going in C tier because obviously it's hard to win the game with just Ninja Master Rush. And this also does go into a lot of other strategies. So you can Ninja Master Rush and then do 3T3 heal, for example, or group of 9. But I think if you expect it, once again, it's really easy to counter. And Ninja Master, out of the meta heroes, he's actually by far the worst late game hero. So yeah, that's why I'm putting it in C tier. You're not going to do this strategy every time, but you play it one out of every 10 matches or so. It'll catch your opponent off guard. It could do well. The next strategy I have is the Trooper Rushes. I kind of did two. Um, it's two versions of it. One where you do 5 troopers and the other where you do 8. I think both are B tier. And the reason they're B tier is they're only usable on small maps like Alpha Sector, Avast, Bayou. On like TriStar, Dryside, you couldn't use these strategies just because there's so much distance between you and the enemy base. I think this is another strategy that does require a lot of skill to use, despite the build order being really simple. So recently, I think the 5 Trooper Rush is the better option because now you actually need 2 gold bricks to do the 8 Trooper Rush. So yeah, but both are pretty much the same. They're just an early game rush strategy. You're normally gonna use Alien Queen and not Ninja Master unless you already Ninja Mastered Rush earlier. Um, so the next rush is Ballista Rush. Now this rush, used to be the most popular strategy right after cruise rods were banned and like the game was played more serious. But then people realized like when people knew how to do build orders better, they just went back to group of nine. But now that gold bricks are nerfed, I think this is gonna come back into the meta a bit, just because gold bricks only worth 400, and you can't just run the assault ship around and pick all the gold bricks up for the group of nine anymore. In terms of if it's better than a trooper rush, though, I don't think so because the build order is a little bit harder, and ballistas are only single target. So obviously, if you pick it against a sheriff, you're not gonna win, and you can't damage boost ballistas. So I think it's pretty much the same as Trooper Rush, as in they're both rush strategies you do early in the game to throw off your opponent or on a map like Avast, but I don't think it's going to be an A tier strategy that's like viable on most maps. So now we have the Clipper Rush. Um, it's actually better than a Ballista Rush because the Clippers are so fast. But the problem is you can only use it on a couple maps. So it's literally Lake Plazon and Black Seas are the only maps you can actually use this on. And normally just on those maps you're going to play 3T3 heal anyways, and you just can't catch up to it at all. Well, you can't catch up to it, you just can't go over the land, and the Clippers can't reliably hit the entire base at the same time. So that's why it's B tier. Uh, Next up we have the double Clipper and double Pirate Battleship, which I think is kind of the same thing pretty much. The battleships have a little bit extra range, so they can take out the base a little bit easier, but I think it's pretty much the same strategy. Um, so this one assault ship thing is the dubious strat, which if you don't know how it works, you rush one assault ship while building a group of nine, and I think back in the day it was the most annoying strategy ever. Nowadays, I think there's a better way to do it, but this is usable on pretty much any map, and I'm gonna put it in A tier, because if you can get really good at it, it's really annoying. But I don't think it's like it's not S tier level. And the next assault ship strategy is just assault ship rushing, for like you'd instantly build one assault ship, and it's kind of the same as the dubious strat, except you're building more assault ships and not a group of nine. I also call this the Geo strat because that's what Geo did a lot. I think it's better than the dubious strat, but only slightly. And I think just any assault ship only comp is kind of it's going to be A tier, where it's usable on any map, but it's not necessarily the most consistent strategy. So now I have this guy, which is kind of it's a rush strategy that uses the hero, 3 melee units, and 2 catapults. Um, so actually, this strategy is not as I thought it was. It's actually just a worse ballista rush for the most part. It does do better against trooper rushing. Um, I don't know if this strategy has a name besides Group of Six, so it's not really a very creative name for a strategy either. Next up is the Catapult Rush, which I also don't think is a very good strategy because at that point you might as well just build a group of nine. It's only going to take a couple more seconds, and this is actually builds much slower than building 4 ballistas. So I don't think, unless you're a beginner player who like struggles to build mounts, I don't think this is a good strategy at all. Next up we have the mounted unit rush, and I think this really is not a good strategy. I think by the time you built it out, you could have like 3T3 heal or one of these assault chip strategies done, and the Gripplies just aren't going to catch it at all. You're usually going to use Alien Queen for this, and in theory, it's like the strongest stat on paper. I believe Val calculated that, but just any Catapult absolutely wrecks this strategy. Assault chips can just go around it. Just not a good strategy. So now I have the flagship rush. I think that, no, that's battleships. So battleship rush, I think, is just a worse clipper rush because battleship only has one more range than and 50 more health than a clipper, but it builds slower, does the same damage, and costs more. So I think this is not going to be as good of a strategy as just doing 4 clippers or 2 clippers and 2 battleships. So now I have the 3T2 heal strategy, which Spybon used to defeat Weldon in last year's year-end tournament. I think this is essentially the same thing. It was good in Gold Rush when assault chips were harder to use, but you'd rather just spam clippers, and also 3T3 heal is just really good because of the flying units. You can just pick up all the gold bricks. So now I have the poor man's group of 9, or the group of 9 junior, whatever this strategy is called. Um, it's 4 melee units, 4 ballistas, and the hero. I think this is a good strategy for beginners, but I think this is just not a good strategy in general because you might as well just build ballista rush and not waste your time with all these melee units because you have to be quick for the ballista rush, and these melee units really aren't going to do anything anyways. So now I have the 3T3 heal group of 9, which is this is a legitimate strategy. It's also just not a good strategy either. I've seen it played. I forgot who played it. This could also be like an assault chip group of 9 where you use 4 assault chips instead of catapults as your specials. Just not a good strategy because the group of 9 just needs the damage, and if you do 3T3 heal, these 5 cavalries aren't. They're just gonna slow you down, so it's not really gonna do much. Okay, so now we have the infamous group of 18 strategy, which I thought was good for the longest time. Um, Turns out it's not because you're just wasting all these time building these melee and mounted units. And the main part of the group of 9 is of course the catapults, just because they do so much damage. But the more time you spend building all these mounts and melee units, it just really lowers your army strength per time value a lot. Now in theory this absolutely crushes people on larger maps like TriStar or Pulsar, but I just don't think it's a good strategy unless you're just camping to a point where you're just camping. Then here's kind of like the not so extreme version of it, which is the group of 13, where you kind of just don't include these extra melee units. Once again, it's just not a good strategy. And it's not as extreme, but it's still just not good. And now this tower just represents like any defense strategy. I don't think there's any like build order for like a standard best defensive strategy just because of how much better offense is in this game. I think it's B tier if you know what you're doing. I think you can reliably pull off a defensive strategy, but I think this any of these strategies are just gonna blow right by it. And yeah, so there's a reason why there's no like standard defense strat. It's because you have such a big advantage when you're attacking, just because you'll have your spells boosted, you'll be ready to hit the click, and you can easily cast ESP or Earthquake. So yeah, this is my list. I think these two strategies are the meta strats. These ones are kind of like they're good all the time, but maybe they're stoppable if you can predict it. These are all like the best rush strategies. And then defense. These strategies are, not so consistent. And these strategies are just like, why are you doing this? So yeah. So I hope you guys enjoy this video, and I hope you guys have a happy new year.